Hello friends, welcome back to Flutter Parse framework app for ride and service delivery management. In previous video, I gave a very high level overview of this application, what it does, and also gave an overview of the related functionalities we are going to build in this next and follow-up videos. I demoed basis of how authentication pages work, how customers and drivers and service provider interact with each other, and how data flows into the pages. I also demoed how to switch dark and light modes, how to update app language settings and reset and forgot password, etc. Now here is the list of all the key features we are going to build in this and follow-up videos. In today's session, we are going to first set up our development environment and gradually build these features. Like first we are going to set up a material app, set up page routes, we are going to create data models, write error validation logic, and finally we'll create some custom spinners and custom messages component. Before we proceed any further, if you like this video, now is the time I request you to please hit the like button below and give it a star to my GitHub repository. And please consider subscribing to this channel, follow me at my Twitter and GitHub platforms for more content like this. You'll find all links included in the video description below. Now at this point, I assume you already have a virtual design at least on a piece of paper ready, and I want you to sign up on Back4App and copy your application keys. Keep in mind that in the beginning, we are not going to build a Uber-like UI design. So we are going to keep things very, very simple. First thing you want to do is Flutter create an app. So at this point, I assume that you already have a VS Code installed. And once you are in the VS Code, just look for an extension called Flutter. Nowadays, you do not need to explicitly install Flutter and Dot on your machine. So go to your VS Code, look for an extension called Flutter. I already have that installed. If not, just go and click the install button here. All right, now open a command prompt window here and go to the browse to the directory where you want to create your app. Before you create your application, it's always a good idea to check the configuration on your machine. So hit the command say Flutter doctor and please review all the configuration available. All right, now is the time you can create your new application here. So just say Flutter create followed by your application name. I'm going to use the word say delivery. So Flutter create delivery is going to create an empty application called delivery on your local machine. Now please refer to the GitHub repository link I included in the video description below. At this point, I want your folder structure, file structure to look exactly like this. So what I mean by that, once you're inside the delivery folder here, inside the delivery folder, inside library folder, I want you to create these folders. And inside that folder, we are going to create empty files. So at this point, these are just the empty files and we are going to code one file at a time. So for example, there are folders called model, blog, shared, views, and there are files inside the views folder, say app.bit. Please keep in mind this is an empty file, but if you want to go ahead and proceed further, please go to my GitHub repository and you will be able to see the exact content there. While you create these files and folders, please review how I have created these files and where I have placed it. So for example, all the data model are validated or placed inside the models here. All the shared components are placed under shared folder and all the basic views are under the views. Similarly, all the business logics you want to write inside a blog directory, which is business logic directory here. So let's start with main.dot file here. So by default, you will see some content on main.dot file. Intentionally, I have deleted everything because I want to start out fresh. Now, before you put anything on main.dot, please remember that you want to use Parse server Back4App as your backend. So first thing I want to make sure I will go to my directory where my pubspec.yaml file is located. And I'm going to add one pub package called Parse server SDK. So Flutter pub add Parse server SDK Flutter. So what this command is going to do is going to include that Parse server SDK and just go to your pubspec.yaml file here and make sure that Parse server SDK Flutter is included in one of your dependencies. Now, first thing we want to import in our main.dot file here is a material package, and we are going to import another package what we just installed, Parse server SDK Flutter. So as you can see, you are seeing some warnings here because these packages are imported but are not used anywhere. This warning will go away soon. Now let's create a method called main function here. Now this is the main function, is the entry point of your application. So inside that main function, first thing we want to do, we want to ensure that it's properly your connection to Back4App Parse SDK is properly initialized. So to do that, we will first define the couple of constants here. Now these constants, if you go to your Back4App application there, you will see a couple of variables there. So application ID and client key, sorry, these are the constant. Copy those constants from that your application settings here and paste it here. So we are going to create three different constants: application ID, client key, and Parse server SDK URL. So this is how your application knows how to connect your Back4App backend. So once you have initialized that, then next thing you want to do, you want to create want to create a parse object here, and this is an await and async, because you want to wait until this is properly initialized. So your main function is going to wait until this parse SDK object is created. Now once you initialize this, so create this initialize method, all you need to do, pass these constants what I've just defined here, and pass this as the parameters to initialize. So that's how you make your connection from main to the back for SDK. Now your application is connected to the back for app. Now you need to create your run app. So run app is going to create the first widget. So here I'm just going to keep it very, very simple. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create this in a separate file here. So that's all. I want to keep my main.dot file very, very clean. So this is the reason I'm going to put all my application widget related logic into app.dot file here. And this is the same design pattern we are going to follow in rest of the application. So that means keep all the views, the pages or panel related files in a separate folder called views. So now let's go start with app.dot file. Now, since we have delegated our app UI creation from main.dot file to app.dot file here we are going to create our UI entry point. So first thing I will need, obviously, the material.dot package here. Next thing, I want to define a stateful widget here, and this widget is going to be the entry point of my application. So here it's not necessary, but I'm just going to define the main function here. It's not necessary again. Run app, and let's go create a stateful class called app. Let me fix a couple of things here, because main is a function and app is a constant here, constant. And now I'm going to define, make it a capital here. So now I'm going to define a class name called app. So let's define a stateful widget here. So class app extend a stateful widget. All right. So inside that stateful widget, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to define a constructor for that app class here. And then I'm going to define an override state. So now let's go define a class app state, which extends to the actual state, which is app. Now all the stateful logic I'm going to keep it's inside this app state. So first thing we want to do, we want to build a widget, and this is this widget is going to be a material app. So we want to override a widget and just pass the build context as a parameter. Inside this widget, let's go create a material app. So I'm going to create, just say return material app. And as you can see, the material app requires a couple of the things to be initialized. First thing is the debug, so whenever first time you create your application, by default, you see a checked banner, a debug banner. So we want to, make it as false. I don't want to see that. And then I want to create a title, and let's put the first say hello title here, and home. So first home widget is going to be login. Again, I want to keep all my UI separate. So we are going to create this login page, somewhere else. And similarly, we'll have more pages like sign up and settings and etc. And this is where the routes come in. So here the concept of the route is that you want to create the URL within your application here. So for example, sign up page is accessible through a different route, login page is accessible through a different route. These are like URL patterns. So the correct way to defining of this route is, please do not statically code it here. So just say signup.route name and call that signup class here. Let me show you what it means. And you have to import the signup.dot file here. So and login.dot file. So whatever view pages you are going to call in your routes, make sure that you import those as packages here. And let me show you the signup.dot file. And here, this is how you define the route name. So all you need to do, so sign up again is going to be a stateful widget, and there you define a static route name equals to the route. All right, so as we progress, what we are going to do, we are going to define routes static name into their individual files, and we are going to call all of those routes in our app.dot file here. All right, now let's talk about the data model. So before you do anything, before you start working on any pages, it's very, very critical and important to work on data model. And you will see a data model does wonder to your application. It enhances productivity, predictability, and object-oriented reuse. Like I can go on and on the advantages of data model. And once your application grows big, you will definitely realize the value of using a proper data model in your application. So this is how you define a data model in dot file here. So for example, in login data model, I'm just giving a very simple example here. There are two, assuming that there are two fields, email and password. So you just define email and password. create a constructor inside the class login data model and pass these two values. So required this dot email comma required this password. So this is the simplest way of creating a simple login data model here. Now in more complex examples, when you have more complex data structure, what you want to do, you may have something else. So for example, you need serialization and deserialization methods. So assuming that you are working with JSON. So in that case, what you want to do, you want to create a method called from JSON, which maps your string dynamics to the JSON values here. So simply, very simply, login data model dot from JSON, and here you return whenever this from JSON method. So the way is going to happen whenever you create an instance of this login data model class, these methods dot from JSON and to JSON, you can call these methods on that particular instance what you just have created. So once you start coding start connecting to the backend, you will see the real value of it. So again, like similarly from JSON and to JSON, these are the two methods very popular for serializing and deserializing the JSON data here. Similarly, you create another method called to JSON, and what to JSON returns, and it just returns the whatever data you are going to get is going to convert into the JSON and return the JSON string of that. So this is how you define. This is a very simple example, and we are going to reuse this kind of code over and over again every time we connect any of the data values to the backend. Just to recap, in our login.dart file, when we are going to connect our login page to application, so this is how we are going to instantiate and create an instance of this particular class. So login data model, and this we are going to initialize. So our objective of beauty of doing it, then you will immediately you can assess the properties of this particular class. So for example, model.email, model.password, model.toJSON, and model.fromJSON. So this is very important, and this is very handy features to make your application more predictive and more types friendly. So far we have covered routes and data model. Now it's time to talk about error validation. So let me show you the demo first. So inside that application, whenever user input some value, say email or password, what do you want to do? You want to do some error validation. So in this case, so for example, if the user enters the wrong value, you don't want certain things. So for example, sign in button is not enabled until users put the correct email ID and password here. So this is the kind of error validation we want to build. Now to do that, simply as I stated earlier, I'm going to keep all the logic values inside altogether so that I can reuse it. So inside the model directory, so create that file called validators.dot file here, and inside that validators.dot file, I'm going to keep all my error logic validations checks here. So let's go first define a class called validators, and inside that validators, I'm going to create a simple function called eval password. So as you can see, this is it can return a null, so that's why I put a question mark is there. So a string eval password, and what this function does, it accepts a value. So let's define a parameter here which takes a string, so eval password, and inside that eval password here, I want to put say string value. So what it does, this method accepts a value here, and I'm going to define a regex pattern here. So what this regex, the objective of this regex pattern is, all it's doing is simply is doing the email check validation here. So I'm going to simply what I want to do, if the value is empty, I just want to return false, saying what password is required. If the value it doesn't match with this kind of a thing, so it fails the regex pattern, I'm going to return an error validation saying this is not a valid password, or this is not a valid email here. So similarly, let's go create another method called eval email here. So again, the logic is you can build as many error validations here, and we are going to keep everything here. And the way you're going to call it, I'm going to, whenever this end of this file, I'm going to export this validator class as a validator block here. So again, just to recap, we are defining all the methods which does the error validation, and we are keeping all those methods into this file. And I will show you in a minute how to access this method from that particular, from any of your file. So for example, in signup.dart file here, so if you have a text form field, what do you want to do? How you want to put an error validation here? Inside your signup.dart file, first thing I'm going to create a boolean button enabled, and then I'm going to create a form key which calls a global key, and then so this is the example I was showing you earlier. Let's define the data model, login data model, and this data model has two fields, email and password here. And now I'm going to define two controller, email controller and password controller. Now these are the two controller I'm going to use it inside those text field. Let's also define a dispose method here. So what dispose method does is going to dispose all the active controller whenever this widget is is taken out of the tree. All right, so now let's go, go inside that, form widget what we have just created. Simply here I need to pass two things here. Form key equals to form key, and the other another thing is auto validated mode. Here I want to say auto validate mode is equals to on user interaction. So now let's go whenever the form is changed. Okay, so I want to create a button enabled here. So on change, just make sure that button enabled depends on form key dot current state dot validate. So what it means here, if your form is valid, button enabled will be valid. If form equals to not valid for any reason, the form will not be, will be disabled. So that's how, whenever your sign in submit button is, that's how you are controlling that button will be enabled or not. It not only depends on one field, it depends on the entire form. So here on the elevated buttons, you simply say if the button enabled equals to true, then you should know button is enabled, otherwise it's not going to, it doesn't do anything. Now let's go, let's focus on those two different fields what we have just created. So first field, as you can see, the text form field, and here this is a simple widget. Sorry, I'm not like, recreating it from scratch. The only thing you need to be aware of is like, how the on-change function works. So here, please pay attention how I am just like, I'm not directly, updating a value here. So remember the data model we created. So all I'm going to say on change value equals to model.email.value equals to value, and simply call the validator. So validators, and I'm going to call that function what we just created in earlier section, eval email, and I'm going to pass this value into this. Last thing you want to do, call that controller. Simply, just to recap on the password field, first you define, make sure that controller you created, you pass that controller here. On changed, you update the model.password equals to value here and call the validator functions. So these three things on any field, and this generic rule applies on anywhere you want to call the validations. All right, so far we have covered routes, data model, array validations. Now it's time to create two different custom components, spinner and custom messages here. So again, custom messages is you want to show some message. So for example, you want to show some online error here. So these are the errors you get from the server or any other messages you want to pass it. So for example, on the successful completion, you want to show something. So first thing I'm going to do inside that constant.dot file here, I'm going to create an enum which has two values, error and success. And you will see the reason why I'm creating like this. The reason I want to do this, never define this spinners and components directly in any file. What I would prefer that I create the custom components inside that constant.dot file here so that I can reuse over and over again here. So first thing you want to do, so for example, say spinner visible equals to false or not. So by default, I want to tell you spinners and messages, they're always there. You just hide it from the UI. And when something happens and you want to show the spinner, you just need to toggle the spinner, you just show it. So that's how most of the application where the people show the spinners and messages, it behaves like that only. So that's the reason I defined a method called toggle spinner. Simply what it does, it takes the spinner visible and it's just going to reverse the stage of it. So if it is true, that means it's visible, you make it invisible. Similarly in show message, as you can see, I am defining a generic method which takes three values here: message visible, that means message should be shown or not, and the message type and the message. Message type is if it is a message type equals to error, then show it in red color. Is a success, show it in green color, and the actual message itself. So very simply, you define this show message here and toggle spinner. These are the generic functions you define, and the way you do that, you call this. So for example, whenever you are calling a backend API, it says set data. First thing you want to call toggle spinner, then you do your backend API access here, and then you call the toggle spinner again. So what it does, so as soon as you hit the send button, it's going to start showing the spinner, and it's going to wait for until you get the feedback from the backend. And once it's done, then you switch the toggle spinner condition back to the normal. So spinner will go away. Similarly with the a message here. So last thing I want to show here inside that constant.dot file here. The reason it's just a matter of preference. I would like to create all the custom components at one place. So similarly, as you can see, I'm creating a stateless widget custom spinner, which takes only one value, toggle spinner, and if it is on, it's just like it shows the circle indicator here. So if you're wondering what the spinner is, actually spinner is coming from this custom spinner stateless widget. So here simply what is showing, I'm going to show a if the toggle spinner equals to yes, that means true value. I'm going to show a circular progress indicator. You can show any of your indicator or any other progress indicator you prefer. Similarly, like custom spinner, I want to create another class called custom messages here. Just to recap, what this custom widgets do, they receive couple of the values here and then they show the appropriate content. So custom message, as you can see, it's taking three values: toggleless message, and then message type, and the message text itself. Okay, if the message type says okay, go toggle message, that means show, then it's a simple if and else condition, then I'm going to show this widget, otherwise it doesn't show that widget. Right, so as simple as that. Once you see this code in actual action, and if you please go through the GitHub repository, and this code will immediately make sense to you. And the reason, again, I keep on emphasizing that I want to create all the custom related components inside that custom.dot file here, so that I can reuse it inside my application over and over again. So that's all I wanted to show in this video today. I think we covered a lot of different topics. In follow-up videos, we are going to add more functionality. So now, since our UI is ready, we have defined data models, we have defined our routes, we have defined our custom components. Now it's time to put it all together and start adding more and more functionalities. So that's all I wanted to show in this video. Please, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and please watch for the new following videos coming very, very soon. Thank you again.